2008, toy company Mattel launched a new line of figures based on the DC Universe. This line of figures was a direct response to Marvel Legends, the popular run of figures that was produced by Toy Biz and then Hasbro. The DC Universe line was really popular and they produced an incredible amount of figures in a very short period of time. And just like Marvel Legends, they produce builder figures and of course exclusive figures and 2-packs and figure sets. And today I'm going to be taking a look at one of my favourites, which is the Clayface vs Batman. I really love the packaging for this. It is bright and it is colourful. I love that the interior display actually has some comic book artwork there. It's a nice bright vivid yellow and it cascades into a sort of gold. And I think the overall look of the packaging is very appealing. Having that window display and being able to see both figures in an action pose is really appealing. And I think they've done a fantastic job of just the overall branding of this line. Likewise, the back is very colourful. We have a couple of biographies about the characters that we can see here. We can see some extra other lines that we can pick up. We can see the Batgirl and Azrael there. And of course, we can see more of the figures themselves. So, starting off with the Batman, we can see obviously this is a re-release, a variant of the Batman that had already been released. This is him in his grey and black colours. The key variant here, of course, is the paint apps, and as you can see, there is that brown paint splatter all over the figure, which is obviously meant to represent the clay from Clayface in the midst of his battle. I think this is a really cool touch. It's always fun when you can have a battle damage variant of a figure, and this, of course, makes him unique to this set. That being said, there is a very childish part of me that sees this as the diarrhea variant. And once you see it like that, it's very hard to see it any other way. Now, the DCU line had a standard superhero male body mold, and this is what we see for virtually all the superheroes. So, Batman will be exactly the same shape and size as Superman, but they would tend to shake it up when it came to their villains. They would see different body types there, whether it's Lex Luthor in his armour or, say, the Joker, who's a skinnier frame. But overall, the articulation is pretty much identical across the whole range. So there is a ball-jointed head which turns all the way around. It can look a really good distance up and a pretty good distance down. Thankfully, the cape, although it's a hard plastic, is actually quite soft, especially at the top there, so it does not hinder the head articulation at all, or the shoulder articulation, which is really, really helpful. So he does have the ball-jointed shoulders there, as you can see, so they swing up and out and to the side, which is great. He has the bicep swivel there, which is brilliant, and he has single-jointed elbows, which bend at 90 degrees. Now, he also has a swivel at the wrist, but there is no hinge there, so he cannot crane his wrist in or out. But he does have a swivel at the waist, so he can spin right the way around if you want to, and there's no resistance there, which is fantastic. And he also has that ab crunch, so he can bend down a good distance. It's not lots, but it's far enough, and he can bend backwards a really good distance, so this is a pretty strong ab crunch. The cape is a hard plastic, and there's not really much in the way of flexibility to it. It can act as a great support, and thankfully it does not hinder the articulation in any way, shape or form, but you cannot mould it or shape it into anything more interesting. He does have those hinge hips there, which they're very good in terms of the articulation. They kick all the way out, but depending on the figure, they can look a bit unsightly. He's got that thigh swivel there, and he's got obviously the single jointed knees, which kick back, again, 90 degrees. But sadly, there is no ankle pivot, so it is just a hinge for the foot, so it just goes forwards and backwards, and it will not rock from the side to side. Sadly, there isn't very much in the way of accessories. Batman does just come with his Batarang, which is a solid, soft plastic piece. And although a grappling gun or something of that nature would have been, really cool to have, I think it's absolutely fine that we've got the Batarang. That's the most iconic thing in Batman's arsenal, and yeah, overall the look is fantastic, and I think that's all you need from Batman. Okay, so moving on to the Clayface. This obviously is a completely brand new, completely unique mould, and wow, what an impressive figure this is. This is absolutely fantastic. I love this. I was a huge fan of the Batman the Animated Series when I was growing up, and this to me just looks like he's come straight from that cartoon and been placed in figure form in my hands, and I just think this is absolutely brilliant. This is the Clayface as I know and love him, and he just looks perfect. Now, he doesn't have an awful lot when it comes to articulation. He can swivel his head from side to side, but it is a little bit compromised by the thick outer layer of his top there, so he cannot move it up and down either, so a bit limited, but he can move it from side to side, which is good. Now, he does have ball-jointed shoulders, and one of the key things I should mention is that for arms, he has a thick rubber piece here. So this takes a little bit of manipulation, and he also has a sort of wireframe inside, so it is pure rubber that you're looking at. Now the advantage of that, of course, is that it does create that mud effect, that clay effect, which I think is phenomenal. And of course it also hides all the joints as well, so he can bend his arms into various positions using the wire inside. He does have a swivel at the waist as well, which is fantastic. And he has that ab crunch there as well, which is, you know, pretty effective. It looks a good distance down and a very good distance back, so that's pretty strong there. His legs can swing out to the sides on that ball joint there that you can see, and of course they can also kick forwards a little bit as well, and backwards a tiny fraction. Obviously his legs are a lot shorter than his main body, so you've got to take that into account when you're trying to pose him. He does have single jointed knees, which so you can bend them to more or less 90 degrees, not quite. And he does have interestingly, a pivot at the ankle there, so he can bend his foot forwards and backwards, but also from side to side. I do really like the effect of the rubber here and how it's been moulded so it just looks like folds and folds of clay, and particularly on the hands there where you can see that as you move there's like that stretch, like almost like a webbed thumb and finger there. I think that's really cool. So I think the mould they've used is fantastic. I think one of the dangers of this figure is that obviously having the rubber arms there versus the hard plastic pieces, that they do look a little bit discoloured, and especially as time goes on I'm worried about whether they will perish because they are a rubber piece. But overall I do really like the effect of this, and I think it works quite well. I also like that there's actually an extra layer of plastic over the top here, so there's actually, it creates a more texture, and there's gaps in the clay as if to make it look like, you know, it's dripping off him. I think that is a really nice touch. So, my final thoughts on this: I think this is an absolutely brilliant set, really. I think if I was going to be critical, of course, I could point out that, yeah, the Batman, you know, would have been nice to have had a few more accessories, maybe a new mould, but that's probably too much to ask, to be fair. I actually think having this variant is actually a pretty cool and quite creative and inventive idea. The idea of having him with that, you know, that battle damage, which is the splatter of the clay, I think that's pretty damn cool, to be honest. In terms of the Clayface, I think he's really impressive. He obviously towers above the Batman there. He's quite a weighty, strong figure, so this is the kind of thing that would have been a builder figure. And I think, you know, he's excellent. He's really, really good. Now, you can criticise the arms, perhaps. Obviously, being that different colour there is quite noticeable, and I think that will get worse with age rather than better. And of course, there is the worry that what happens if the rubber does perish over time. That said, I do think it's inventive. I really like that it adds texture and makes the figure feel unique, and the overall result is really impressive. He's obviously lacking when it comes to articulation, but again, given his shape and size and the quality of this character, I think it's difficult to ask too much of him really when it comes to that. So I think what we've got is really stand up, a really strong effort, and I really love this set. I think it's really fun, I think it's dynamic, I think it's different, and it's a great one to have in the collection. I hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as I'll be posting more videos soon.